Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle real estate market and housing market predictions for 2020. First of all, Happy New Year to all you who are watching this. It's a new year, everybody's excited, got their goals, and I don't know about you, but it just seems like there's a little bit of extra excitement in the air here around 2020. So maybe it's the new decade, maybe it's putting the old decade behind. I'm not sure what's exciting for you, but I know I'm excited for the new year. So without further ado, let's recap 2019. In 2019, we saw a much more balanced market than we have over the past few years. In 2017 and 2018, we saw the list price to sales price ratio up over 7%. Multiple times throughout both years, and that's 7% above the asking price. We were seeing lots of multiple offer situations, and that was driving the prices up double digits at the beginning of 2018 and 2017, 2016. I mean, we had multiple years of double-digit price growth, and we were seeing that as those offers were competing against each other, that average percentage over list price was significant. What we saw in 2019 was something a lot different, at least different than what we've seen in recent years. We did get over 1% above the asking price in April for 1 month, but overall, the market was a lot more balanced in 2019, and we saw a lot fewer multiple offer situations, and we saw that the average asking price to sales price was just under the 100% mark for the year. So homes were selling right around the asking price, and in certain months, maybe a little bit below, but on average, we were seeing the homes selling for about what the asking price was. Another thing that we saw in 2019 was a decrease in mortgage interest rates, which I do think had a very significant impact on stabilizing the housing market, specifically in the higher placed areas like Seattle. Interest rates in 2018 spiked in the spring and carried on throughout the rest of the year. They were on average, according to Freddie Mac, above 4.5%, pretty much from April 2018 all the way until January 2019. And then what we saw for the remainder of the year here is we saw a decrease in those interest rates for the year 2019. According to Freddie Mac, the 2019 average was around 3.9% across the country. But we did see months where we were in that 3.6, 3.7 range on average. We saw interest rates dip below 3.5% 1 week and finished the year, according to their primary market survey, 1-2, so January 2nd, right at 3.72% on average. So what impacted the housing market last year, one of the key factors was that increase in interest rate, and what that does is it impacts affordability. And I had clients that were all of a sudden really concerned about their interest rate and weren't able to qualify for the prices that sellers were asking all of a sudden because of the increase in interest rates. And so when we saw those interest rates decrease this year, it brought back that affordability that was lost at the end of 2018. I mentioned this already, but we did see a decrease in competition between buyers. Sellers were, on average, selling their houses right around the asking price. There were awesome houses that were getting multiple offers, but that wasn't the norm, and there were quite a bit fewer multiple offer situations where buyers were competing against each other. I had to use the escalation clause very few times in the negotiations this year, where it was almost always included over the past few years. It was a necessity, whereas this year it was more few and far between. And in one situation, we had an escalation clause, and my clients won this situation, and it was like $2,000 over the asking price is what it ended up selling for. But we had the escalation clause, the other person didn't. So it was just a different situation. It wasn't competing to see who could get to 10 or 15 or 20% over the asking price first, which we were seeing back in 2016, 2017, and even into 2018. Lastly, I wanted to highlight the just lack of price growth in the Seattle market. We ended the year just below where we did last year in median sales price, and really average sales price was up a little bit. It was pretty much a year in Seattle, to be honest. We saw the housing market climb in the spring, just like it normally does. It didn't reach those 2018 heights. We had some scary, like 10% down year over year kind of numbers in the spring because the market was so hot back in early 2018. But we did see more of a stabilization as the year progressed. Some fun news I wanted to highlight here really quickly as well. Seattle was rated the 9th best city to live in earlier in 2019 by U.S. News and World Reports. And they also rated Washington State as the #1 best state to live in for 2019 as well. So this area is getting a lot of love. There's a lot of people moving here and a lot of job growth, and it's being recognized as well by the national news. People are noticing. Some things to keep an eye on in 2020. First of all, I think we need to all keep an eye on the presidential election. There's a lot of opinions, and everybody's got them. My wife says, opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got one, but really everybody's got two, right? So there are a lot of thoughts about, the current president, who should be the next president, what's going to happen to the economy as a result of the elections. And I'm no economist, and I don't want to pretend to be one on TV or YouTube for that matter. But I do want to point out that it's just something to watch and keep an eye on. I think that the political climate is going to impact at least the stock market, and it could impact the housing market. What we saw in the last election were people just kind of sitting on the sidelines in the fall, and then all of a sudden the market took off, and so did the housing market. So it'll just be something to watch. I don't have necessarily a prediction on what's going to happen. I just think it's something that we need to watch here. Market correction or crash. There have been people talking about market crash since, 2018, maybe even before that. People that every year, market crash 2019, market crash 2018, market crash 2020, market crash 2021. So there are a lot of YouTube videos that you can go watch about why the market was supposed to crash 2 years ago and why it's going to crash in 2020. Again, I don't want to make any predictions like that. I do think it's interesting to just keep that on your radar. The stock market has been on a record long streak, and at some point there's going to be a correction in the stock market. I'm not going to try to predict when that is, but I will point out that historically the housing market doesn't always have a massive correction when the stock market does. In fact, a lot of times if you look at the data over the few year period, it's very similar to, sometimes even the housing market goes up. Granted, last time, which is what's in most people's mind, the housing market was significantly impacted, and it was mainly a result of the housing market. It was the housing market's fault primarily for the last correction that we saw in the housing market and the stock market. So just another thing to throw out there. Again, I don't want to make predictions one way or the other. I don't feel that's my role, but people always ask me what my thoughts are, and these are the things that I'm thinking about keeping in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, this is more of a local thing in Seattle. You're going to see continued job and economic growth in the Seattle-Bellevue area. Everybody's talking about it, and I think it's noteworthy to point out. Each housing market is connected in some way, but each location and each real estate market is also individually influenced. And so, there are national influences. You have the stock market and you have the country's economics as a whole, but Seattle itself has a local economy, and that local economy is thriving. There's lots of people moving to the area. There's a lot of job growth, a lot of wage growth, at least on the higher end. And so I'm thinking that that's going to continue, and a lot of other people are agreeing with me on this, that that's going to help continue the run here in Seattle, at least for the time being. And then another thing to point out, just the significance of the millennial homebuyer population. It's a huge demographic of homebuyers that have started to enter the housing market and will continue to enter the market. Windermere's data says something like 46%, if I remember correctly, of the sales were to first-time millennial home buyers in this area in 2019. So we can expect to continue seeing a strong output and strong showing from millennial home buyers here in 2020. I suspect that they will be in greater numbers here this year than even in previous years. And if you're a millennial home buyer and you're watching this and you've never done this before, it's your first time, I'd love to sit down and just have a casual conversation with you about how you go from thinking about buying, right, and to actually making it happen. And I found that there's usually two main fears or things holding people back. And that first thing is, how do I do this? I've never done this before. And the other side of it is, how do I get the money? How do I afford it? I know I'm not paying cash. I know I need to get a loan. How do I do that? And I'd love to be able to help take both of those and bring some clarity and some value to your situation. So if you're watching this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. A couple 2020 predictions from yours truly. First of all, I believe that we're going to see continued interest rates in this same ballpark. I think that 3.8 to 4% range is reasonable. That's also what Freddie Mac is predicting. They're predicting 3.8 to 3.9 over the next few years. And that's additionally what a lot of other mortgage experts are predicting and economists are predicting. So thinking we'll see interest rates stay in that same rate. We saw what happened when they went up in 2018. It was a big impact specifically on the higher price markets. And I suspect that we'll see those rates staying down, partially to just help sustain the run. Another prediction here, moderate home price growth in Seattle. I think what we're going to see in 2020 is a little bit more growth than we saw in 2019. 2019 was, in my opinion, just a little bit of a recovery from 2018, but also a bit of a stabilization in markets like Seattle. Other markets around the country had different impacts, right? They all felt things differently in 2019, but Seattle specifically really was like, taking a little bit of a breather, at least at the beginning, but really has picked up here in the last few months. If you follow along on my market updates, my monthly ones, you'll see that the last few months really have picked up in the Seattle area. And as we head into 2020, I wouldn't be surprised to see an increase in competition. I talked about on my January 2020 market update. So make sure you go head over to take a look at that one after this video and see what I'm talking about. But really, we've seen a decrease in housing supply, again, back to those 2017, 2018 numbers. And we're seeing a lot more buyers in the market again, which means more competition and potentially more home price growth. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, I don't want to predict that this is going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the market heat up and become more frenzied like it was in 2016, 2017. Now, we're in a different spot on the price scale than we were and the affordability metrics, but I wouldn't be surprised as the amount of new construction in this area really doesn't keep up with the demand and the amount of people moving here. What it does is it puts a lot of pressure on the existing home inventory and the, if you want to call it the used home, resale home market. So I think that we're going to see a return to a little bit more competition in 2020, at least for the first half of the year. Thanks so much for watching my predictions video here for the Seattle real estate market in 2020. If you watched this video all the way to the end, I know you found value in it, or at least you wanted to know what I had to say. So please subscribe to my channel so that you can see my Seattle real estate monthly market updates, where I follow the market on a monthly basis. And of course, if you have questions, you're thinking about buying or thinking about selling in 2020, I'd love to be a resource for you. You should be able to find my contact information here somewhere around the video, and I'd love to bring value to your situation.